Welcome back, Short Kings. Today we're going to be talking about games on PS Plus that are under 4 hours. Are you tired of long games demanding dozens of hours of your time? Or maybe you're just a working dad who's lucky to squeeze in an hour or two of gaming a night. These games let you experience a full, satisfying adventure without the time commitment. Variety without the burnout. Whether it's a gripping story, a brain-scratching puzzler, a quick burst of addictive action, or just some quality time with your player too. These games are the perfect distraction to relax and turn off your mind. If you're on PlayStation Plus Extra, you're in the right place. There are plenty of fantastic short games ready to go, because that's what we focus on here on this channel. Short games on PS Plus Extra. Yeah, we're pretty niche over here. Welcome to the gang, Short Kings. Subscribe to join us. One of us, one of us. But if you're new to short games, you might be overwhelmed by the sheer number of options and not sure where to start. Analysis paralysis. There's way too many games in this catalog, and it can be overwhelming. Who has time to sift through them all? Me, that's who. So you don't have to. I've done all the sluggish work and kept only the good ones. Every game I recommend I've not only played, but beat as well. There's many benefits to playing short games, but I did a separate video on that. Go watch that if you're not convinced. But chances are, if you clicked on this, you want to get to this list right away. So let's get started. But in what order? So since there were a bunch of new games added recently, I'm going to mention the newest ones first. Some of them I've never even talked about on this channel. So even if you've seen those old videos, you're going to get something new out of this one. So let's get started. Gris. The first game is called Gris. This 2D platformer has a gorgeous art style and a somewhat emotional journey. There's no talking or even text. The story is just told through art and emotion. It follows a young girl navigating a world shaped by her grief. The game is like a moving painting with its hand-drawn art style, fluid animation, and its beautiful use of color. After playing this for only a few minutes, especially the beginning levels, I thought, maybe I should draw. Maybe I should start drawing, or take up drawing, or maybe I'll make a game one day based on my drawing. I don't even draw that well, but this game just inspired the artist within me more than any other. Maybe because it was so minimalist in the beginning, and kind of proved that 3D rendered realistic graphics aren't the pinnacle of gaming that we keep thinking it is. It just makes you appreciate that less is more sometimes. Let's talk about the gameplay. It's a platformer. You're traversing and jumping and going back and forth and solving little puzzles here and there. There's no traditional combat, no fail states, just exploration. The farther you get in the game, the more you unlock. Every new level keeps it interesting by introducing new mechanics as well as literally new colors. You get more and more colors throughout the game, so you'll realize how intentional those intro levels were with their minimalist art style. The art is great, the visuals, but so is the sound. I know sometimes it's easy to overlook, but in a game without voiceover or even text, the sound design is absolutely pivotal. How else are you going to make people feel emotional with just drawing? Gris is a meditative game. It will make you feel. There might be some introspection, or maybe it's just a distraction. Or maybe you'll even hate it. The best way to know is to try it yourself. I mean, it's only 4 hours. It has a rating of 83 according to Metacritic. Sayonara, Wild Hearts. The next game on the list is a fast-paced, music-driven rhythm adventure, and it just got added to PS Plus Extra last month. I downloaded this game not even knowing what I was getting into. I just saw the visuals in the trailer, but had no idea what the actual gameplay was. I just thought, cool art style, I'll give that a try. And it's a short game. I hate using this word, but it's really artsy and imaginative. Okay, to the gameplay. I'm going to be honest here. My first impressions... Remember the original Sonic games for the Sega Genesis when you'd hit that crystal and you'd go down that half pipe collecting coins? Oh man, that music was so good. And if you did it right, you'd get a gem at the end. Yeah, the first 20 minutes of this game, I was like, oh, this is like a full game based on that level. But do not fret, it gets more and more complicated as the levels go on. First, you're just collecting coins, then you're jumping, with 0 tutorials, by the way. Personally, I find it refreshing when a game just throws you in, doesn't tell you anything, and doesn't hold your hand. So after failing a few times, you're like, oh, X is jump. Obviously, they want me to jump right here. Then this new thing that they taught you, jump, becomes a rhythm-based part of the game. So now you're into QTE territory. A whole game of QuickTime events? I thought we got over that. I know it doesn't sound good the way I'm explaining it, but it's pretty catchy and intuitive. I'm just being honest and telling you my first impressions. You take on the role of a young woman navigating maybe her dreams, which are filled with neon-lit highways, cosmic motorcycles, skateboards, fast cars, sword fights, robots, and heart-pounding chase sequences. So gameplay-wise, we're looking at an arcade-style rail shooter type, blending elements of endless runners, rhythm games, and QuickTime events. This is all set to an absolutely stellar soundtrack, by the way. Each level plays like like a different music video, with shifting mechanics and environments that keep things fresh from start to finish. It's like a video game version of the Winamp visualizer. Oh man, that's taking me back too. It's a bit trippy, yet it's immersive. Kind of reminds me of Rez Infinite, which we'll talk about later, but with way better graphics and art direction. While Sayonara Wild Hearts is light on story, it's heavy on vibes. This is the kind of game you play for just pure joy of movement and music. Just put on some headphones and get lost in it. It's a short ride at just about 2 hours, especially if you don't care about perfect runs or high scores. But it does have a gold, silver, bronze rating after every run. Some are as long as 5 minutes and some seem less than even a minute long. They go by pretty fast. It'll leave you wanting to replay it again and again, especially with its high score chase and arcade-style replayability. It just got added and is a pretty small game. It has a high rating on Metacritic of 84. Mystic Pillars. Mystic Pillars is a puzzler, and it's a math puzzler. It's not for everyone, but once you get a few puzzles right, you'll get addicted and want to try the harder ones. And boy, does it get harder. First, let's explain the rules a bit. Each pillar has a number of gems, and that determines how far you can go. So if you have 4 gems in this pillar, you can choose to move to this pillar 3 spots away, and when you land on it, you'll take 3 gems with you. So now the original has 1 gem left, and 3 have moved to the new space, which is 3 columns away. The goal of this simple game is to match your columns with the columns in the top right corner. Seems easy enough, but you only get a few moves, so you have to get it perfect. There's a whole story in there about an ancient Indian curse, and you go in between towns trying to free them from this curse, but honestly, you'll skip the story because you'll want to go back into the action. But if you do, I learned the hard way, there's actually a trophy for not skipping the voiceovers. It's another minimalist game. The music is okay, and the visuals are pretty basic, but the gameplay is the star here. Some levels you'll get it on your first try and think, oh, this is an easy game. And then some you might get stuck on for like half an hour, which is troubling because this is supposed to be only a 2-hour game. So that's 120 minutes, but there are 100 levels. So how fast are you supposed to beat them? So that means to stick with the 2-hour runtime, you're expected to beat the majority of the levels in about a minute, but don't feel bad if you get stuck on some. Now, I thought this game was leaving this month, so I beat all 100 levels, but now that it's not, you can take your time. It's a nice game to take a break from the much more demanding games and play for like 5 minutes at a time. So since we're talking about puzzle games, let's just throw in all the other puzzlers right here. If you don't like puzzlers, then skip to the next section. So let's get to the puzzlers. Tetris Effect Connected. This is more than just another version of the classic Tetris. Sure, it has updated graphics and visuals, but the star of the show here is the dynamic music. What do you mean by dynamic music? Well, the music and the sound effects kind of wait for your turn and react to your gameplay. It's a full-on sensory experience, they say. It's almost hypnotic and in a way meditative. This one is great with headphones on too. Yeah, I know it's just Tetris, but just give it a try to see what all the fuss is about. Why does such a simple game have such a high rating? Yes, you can have split screen local multiplayer with this one, adding a whole new level to the classic format. You can play versus mode like we have for 20-30 years, but in the co-op mode you have to work together, not just against AI players, but there's even boss battles here. What? Tetris with boss battles? How does that work? Well, you'll have to find out. The Garden Between. This next puzzler has a bit of a story and it's one of the easiest games to play. I'd say this is the easiest platinum I've ever gotten. 2 hours. It's a puzzler with a story about 2 young coming-of-age kids. It revolves around the bond and memories between the 2 childhood friends, and I think one of them is moving away, so they're kind of like reminiscing about all the good times they had as kids. But the game itself takes place in a surreal world where time flows in unusual ways. This allows you to manipulate time to solve puzzles and progress through the story. The one character can move time and the other character can walk into space. It's kind of hard to explain. You'll just have to play a level to get it. As you guide these characters through the dreamlike islands filled with oversized objects from your childhood memories, you slowly start to uncover the emotional depth of their friendship. Again, another game with no dialogue or text. The Gardens Between relies on visual storytelling, atmosphere, music, and environmental puzzles to create an experience that is both relaxing and thought-provoking. The game is pretty short, but it's impactful. The Pedestrian. Okay, so this one's going to stand out a bit because it's unlike anything you've ever played before. The puzzles are great and all, but this one is also a platformer. And the presentation is what sets it apart. It brilliantly blends 2D and 3D. You control a stick figure that can only exist in street signs and public symbols. These mini 2D worlds actually have an effect in the 3D world. The puzzles involve rearranging signs, connecting pathways, and just figuring out how to traverse the urban landscape through the signage. It's visually stunning because it's unexpected. Its little brain teasers are great. It's a rewarding experience, and with its short time, it doesn't overstay its welcome. And just when you think you've learned everything and are ready to move on, you get to the last level. The last level flips everything you knew on its head. It's one of my favorite last levels of any game I've played. I won't say too much, but it just has to be experienced. This game, in my opinion, is worth playing just to get to the last level. You will not see it coming. It's a puzzler after all, but a puzzler that does have a story, which is really rare. Infamous First Light. Since we took a step into the 3D world, let's hang in there a bit with a more traditional game. Let's switch the gears away from puzzlers and talk about typical single-player adventures. If you are thinking these games are great, but they don't really feel like a modern game, then I've got good news for you. This next game is not that. Well, it is. It's pretty old at this point. It doesn't look that modern. But if you're here clicking on short games under 4 hours, expecting an open world game, well, this is the closest you're going to get. It's a 3D world and you move around like Spider-Man through the small city. It's got fast traversal with superpowers, stylish combat, and an open world full of collectibles. All this in a short game? Yes. If you've already played the Infamous games, this one is a standalone expansion to Infamous Second Son. You play as Fetch, another conduit with cool powers. Neon powers. But her story is much more focused and emotional compared to the main game. Since it's a prequel, you don't really need to play any of the other games. Although there is a nod at the end. It's a great little game, and honestly, it doesn't feel that short. After you play a game like this, you'll wonder, why do the big ones have to be so long? I got to experience the fun gameplay, I upgraded my character, I got new abilities, I did even collectibles, I even got a gripping story, but it was all in such a short runtime. So why do AAA games have to be 10 times as long as this game? No, 20 times as long as this game. Sure, you get to do a lot, but when you look back at what happened in the game, you'll only remember like 2 hours of it. So even though this isn't the greatest game, or even the greatest entry in the Infamous games, you'll really appreciate short games just by experiencing the long game formula, but in a short game format. Matterfall. This next one is by House Marquee, my personal favorite studio. They made Returnal, Resogun, and are about to release a brand new IP very soon, which I'm really excited about. This one is a throwback to the 90s eras of games, side-scrolling shooters. What sets this game apart is its fluid movement, particle physics, and bullet hell. Things we love and expect from House Marquee. This also adds verticality, so you're not just going left to right, there's lots of ups and downs, dashing, double jumping, and all the while manipulating matter to create platforms for you to land on. It seems like an easy game to watch, but the controls and moves might be a bit too much for a beginner. You're constantly dodging relentless waves of projectiles. It rewards skillful movement. The more you master all the abilities, the more satisfying it gets. If you've already played Returnal, you'll feel right at home. You can totally see Returnal's DNA in its infancy. Dash in midair to avoid bullets, moving at high speed, avoiding dozens of bullets on the screen. Even the melee attack is very similar. There's so much of Returnal's blueprint in here. But do you know how you know that this is a serious platformer that demands good control? Well, the worst thing about platformers is press X to jump. On mouse and keyboard, when you jump, you don't take your hands off the mouse, pausing your movements. But with console, every time we jump, every time we press X, we have to take our thumbs off the joystick to press X and then go back to the joystick. A huge disadvantage, which is why Matterfall switches it all up and makes R1 the jump button. That way you can still aim and shoot while jumping. This is why people pay $300 to have back buttons, because you're going to need it. And similarly, the circle button is usually the dash button. Over here, it's the L1, because again, you're going to need those thumbs on the double sticks the entire time. Just the control scheme alone sets this game apart from traditional platformers. The story is okay, but the boss battles are awesome and difficult. If you haven't tried Returnal yet, or don't even have a PS5, give this one a try for a mini tour of what to expect. Okay, so the next one is not related, I swear, but it has so many similarities. From Matterfall, we're going to Towerfall, another game where you use one stick for movement and another stick to aim in a 360 range all around you. So Towerfall Ascension, just like how Matterfall had Returnal DNA because it was the same company, Towerfall is the blueprint baby of Celeste, which is one of the best platformers ever. It's by the same makers and you can see a lot of its DNA here. Celeste is more of a typical platformer. All the levels are constantly changing and you go from left to right, jumping all over. This one is not quite that kind of a platformer. The screen screen doesn't move from left to right. Instead, it's a static screen where you can fall at the bottom and you come right through the top of the screen. Or when you leave the screen to the right, you'll come back to the left. It's like a really old way of level design. But for this game, it works. This game is fast-paced and requires precision-based archery. It's all about quick reflexes and skilled shots. The mechanics are simple but incredibly satisfying. You have a limited number of arrows, which means you need to be precise with your shots. You can even catch incoming arrows mid-air to turn the tables on your enemies. It has co-op and you can play against each other, but this game shines in the co-op campaign mode, where we could take hordes of enemies together. It gets harder and harder. It will challenge you and your friend. Rez Infinite. Okay, so this one I should have talked about in the beginning next to Sayonara Wild Hearts, but I wanted to focus on the new games that came to the service first. There are levels in Sayonara Wild Hearts that are almost exactly like Rez Infinite. Both games are music-driven rail shooters. Well, at least some parts. Both games rely on fast instincts and offer reaction-based gameplay rather than complex movement or button control. Rez Infinite is based on a 2001 game. Maybe that's why it has such a high rating. The gameplay loop is very straightforward. Personally, I think the rating is a bit high for what it offers, especially considering that Sayonara Wild Hearts is rated lower. It literally has levels where you do the exact same thing. I don't know, maybe it was a sign of its time. Whoever does it first gets the best ratings usually. This one has been on the service a very long time. If I had to pick between the two, try the new one that just came out. The visuals are stunning, while this one offers a more vintage 3D experience. But then again, imagine playing this in 2001. Your mind would have been blown. While these last games offer a fantastic solo experience, some of the best short games truly shine when player 2 joins. These next games are designed to be shared. They can totally be played solo, but you get more value playing with a friend. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. Shredder's Revenge is a love letter to the arcade classics of yesteryear, the nostalgia of the beat-em-ups and the 90s franchise. We got vibrant pixel art and probably one of the best soundtracks on PS Plus. Did I mention that the Wu-Tang Clan have a song on here?
The world is mine. Nice to meet you. Now I'm here to beat you with full force.
Not only that, but these actual real songs are all turtle related. They'll get you so hyped as you mash buttons and relive the glory days without the need for a stack of quarters. Join a server online and play up to 6 players. The levels are very fast, 5 to 8 minutes each, and you'll breeze right through it. This game is worth downloading just for the intro song alone. Resogun, another one from House Marquee, the makers of Returnal. If Matterfall was too difficult for you, how about an arcade shoot 'em up? I mean, we just did a beat 'em up, so it's the perfect next game. Same things to expect here. Bullet hell, particle physics, and difficult bosses. But no platforming here, just shooting left or right. The levels are presented in a unique cylindrical design, so it's constantly rotating, which is really useful for the huge bosses it throws at you, so you can anticipate their behavior. This is a great game to play solo, and it gets challenging the more you play, but play it co-op and you'll have an even better time because someone can always watch your 6 for you. It's a must play if you haven't tried it already. Just have it on your system to just play a level here and there as a palate cleanser from other games. Hotshot Racing. Before we move on from the arcade-like games, let's throw a racing game for good measure. Now it really feels like a 90s arcade. The graphics, the sound, it's perfect. Play the last 3 game on blast and throw some quarters on the ground. Stick your gum under the table and spill some soda on the floor so you get that sticky floor for the authentic experience. Hotshot Racing is a classic arcade racer. Kind of reminds me of Virtua Racer, maybe even Outrun. Although it looks straight out of the 90s with its low polygon nostalgic look, it runs at a smooth 60 frames per second. It has multiple game modes too. It has a fun cops and robbers mode and supports both online and split screen multiplayer. It's so easy to pick up, and again, give it to your player 2 for an even better time. Stick Fight, the game. Okay, this one you cannot play solo. You absolutely need a player 2. It's a chaotic, physics-based versus game that throws you against each other in unpredictable battles. It's the classic stick fight games from the early days of the internet and flash games. Newgrounds on PlayStation? It's hilarious to play with a friend as it throws you into many levels of wacky and powerful weapons. Every match feels random as heck and will keep you on your toes. Some fights will last as little as 4 seconds, as the level will just fall apart. There's environmental hazards too, which help a lot if there's a skill balance issue. It's pure unfiltered fun, but you do need a player 2. Untitled Goose Game. What genre does this even fit in? Comedy stealth puzzler. Let's call it that. Basically, you're an annoying goose that causes chaos in a peaceful small town. You steal items, outsmart the humans, make them hurt themselves, make them break their own things. You're basically a prankster. That's a goose. There's an even dedicated button for honk and another one for flapping your wings as a distraction. You will 100% abuse the honk button. In the solo mode, you really needed to figure out your timing, make the radio go off as a distraction, and then sneak behind him to do the thing. But in co-op mode, you have each other to cause distractions. One of you annoys and the other one does the sneaky stuff. It's a silly game, a silly goose game, but it's definitely worth playing if you haven't already. Biped. Okay, this next one came to PS Plus very recently, but it's a co-op game. It should have been in the intro, but I think it fits here better in the co-op category. It's a charming co-op puzzle platformer. Wow, it has everything. It's a puzzler, it's a platformer, and it has co-op. Okay, the first thing that sets this apart is its silly movements and controls. Right stick is right leg, left stick is left leg. So even walking becomes a challenge. You work together to solve fun physics-based puzzles, where some platforms require the blue to step on it, and other platforms require the pink characters to step on it. And sometimes you have to do this on a moving platform and sync and communicate your movements 1 foot at a time. It's a delightful, lighthearted experience. You can totally play this solo. Again, it shines in co-op. You need to play co-op. It didn't get the best score, but at least it didn't get the worst score, which will be our final entry. Erica. When I first played Erica, I thought, dang, these are some of the best graphics I've ever seen. And it's a short game too. I'm in for a treat. Why does this have such a low rating? Then the next scene, the human characters appeared. I realized, wait, this is just an interactive movie. I think they call it a full motion video thriller. It's sort of like Life is Strange in the way that your choices and conversations matter and affect the gameplay, but that's where the similarities stop. I will give it some props for doing something different. It tried to use the touchpad as its main control scheme. And apparently at one point, this game had an app, so you could use your phone to control and swipe instead of the awkward touchpad. While the story is dark and intriguing, many players felt like the choices didn't really matter that much, and the pacing was really slow at times. Despite its flaws, Erica is still cinematic, and it's still an engaging mystery. It's worth a try if you just want to see an interactive movie and follow the story. But the controls are, well, I don't even know if I can call this a video game. I know this isn't a puzzler or a co-op. I don't even know what to call it. I left it at the end because it has such a bad rating. It's not for everyone, but maybe a movie night is in order soon. Anywho, those are the games that are under 4 hours on PS Plus Extra as of March 2025. I hope you found something new to play, and if you have played any of these, let me know which ones you recommend and which ones you didn't like. If I missed a must-play game that was under 4 hours, let me know what else is worth playing. Until next time, be a friend, and I'll see you again.